I never belonged at these parties. Standing on Ashley's pool deck in my steel-toed work boots while everyone else wore designer shoes, I felt like an imposter. The concrete was still wet from earlier rain. And I kept shuffling toward the edge, trying to disappear into the background like always. My wife Jennifer was across the yard laughing with her siblings, Kyle and Ashley, looking perfectly at home with her people. The golden children, all three of them. I should have stayed home from work that day. Told Jen I was too exhausted. But you don't say no when the Caldwell family throws a party. Not if you want peace at home. I was minding my business, watching the pool ripple, thinking about the overtime I'd need for this month's electric bill, when Kyle started walking over with that swagger that screamed entitlement. He had that look in his eyes, the same one he always had before making me his entertainment. "Marcus," he called out loud enough for everyone to hear. "Time to show these people some real fun." I took a step back. "I'm good, man. Really just enjoying the party." But Kyle never took no for an answer. His hand clamped down on my arm, not friendly, but possessive. "No, no, no," I said, trying to stay calm. "Kyle, I'm in my work clothes. I don't want to." "Don't be such a buzzkill," Jennifer cut in, not even looking up from her conversation. "It's Ashley's day, Marcus. Stop being so dramatic." Dramatic? That was always her word when I tried to set boundaries. When I didn't want to be the target of their games. "Seriously," Marcus, Ashley chimed in, irritated. "Can you just go along with something for once? This is my special day." The crowd was watching now. Phones coming out to record. This was how it always went in Jennifer's family. You played along or you were the problem. Kyle's grip tightened. "See, even the birthday girl wants you to have fun." I tried protesting one more time, but my voice was drowned out by laughter and encouraging shouts from the guests. That's when Kyle spun me hard like I was a toy. The world tilted sideways. I felt my feet leave the ground. For a split second, I was airborne, completely at gravity's mercy. I wasn't a kid. I was a 34-year-old man with bills and a bad back from warehouse work. But in that moment, I felt as helpless as a child being bullied. The concrete steps were right behind me. I could see them rushing toward me as I spun. Those hard, unforgiving steps leading into the pool. This was supposed to be just a joke, right? Just Kyle being Kyle, just harmless family fun. But as I felt his hands release me as I fell backward, I knew this wasn't going to be funny at all. Time stretched like taffy. My arms flailed uselessly as I realized exactly where I was headed. The concrete steps, 3 sharp-edged steps I'd noticed earlier. Beautiful, expensive stone that was hard as hell. My back hit those steps with a crack. Not a thud, not a splash, but a sharp, definitive crack that echoed across the entire yard like a gunshot. The pain was immediate and absolute. This wasn't stubbing your toe. This was my entire world narrowing to one point of agony radiating from my lower back. I tried to breathe, but my lungs forgot how to work. I was lying there, half in the pool, half out. My work shirt soaked. The water was warm, but I couldn't feel anything below my waist. Nothing. Like someone had erased the bottom half of my body. "Walk it off, Marcus." Jennifer's voice was sharp with irritation. "You're embarrassing us. Don't be such a baby." A baby. I couldn't feel my legs, and she was calling me a baby in front of everyone. "Of course," Ashley said from the patio, frustrated. "Of course, he pulls this drama on my birthday, my one special day, and he has to make it all about him. Like, I'd planned this. Like I'd asked Kyle to throw me into her pool steps just to steal her thunder." I tried to speak, tried to tell them something was really wrong. "I can't move my legs," I whispered, but nobody heard over there. Complaints. Then everything changed. Nicole, one of Ashley's friends I'd barely noticed, suddenly appeared beside me. While everyone else complained about their ruined party, she was actually looking at me with focused attention. "Hey," she said, calm but urgent, kneeling next to me. "Can you hear me?" I nodded. "Can you feel this?" She pressed my shin, my thigh, my ankle. "Nothing. Absolutely nothing." "Can you wiggle your toes?" I tried. God, I tried so hard, staring down at my feet, willing them to move, but the signal wasn't getting through. Nicole's face went white. The color drained from her cheeks fast. "Nobody touch him," she said with sudden authority that made everyone stop. "Nobody move him at all." The laughter finally died. "What's wrong with him?" Jennifer's voice changed. Less irritated, more worried. "This could be spinal," Nicole said, pulling out her phone. "This could be really, really bad." Spinal. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Wheelchairs never walking again. The shift was instant. One moment, everyone treated this like slapstick comedy. The next, Nicole's voice cut through like a scalpel. "Everyone, back up now. I mean it. Get away from him. Nobody touches him. Nobody moves him." Even Kyle shut his mouth. Nicole crouched next to me, hands hovering but not touching like I was a bomb. "What's your name?" she asked steadily. "Marcus," I managed. "Okay, Marcus. I'm Nicole. I'm a paramedic and you're going to be okay, but I need you to stay very still. Can you do that?" A paramedic. Thank God. Finally, someone who knew what they were doing. "Can you feel this?" She touched my leg again. I stared down but felt nothing. "No," I whispered. "Nothing." She nodded grimly and pulled out her phone. Before Nicole could dial, Kyle opened his mouth again. "Come on, Nick," he laughed nervously. It was just horseplay. Probably just winded. Maybe pulled a muscle. "Kyle, shut up and stepped back," Nicole said coldly. "Hey, there's no need. There's every need. You just threw a grown man backward into concrete. He can't feel his legs. This is not horseplay. This is a medical emergency, and if you don't get out of my way, I'm going to have you arrested for interfering with medical care." That shut him up quick. Jennifer stumbled over, cocktails still in hand. "Nicole, don't you think you're being dramatic? Marcus is always prone to making things seem worse than they are. He's probably just tired from work." "Ma'am," Nicole said without looking away from me. "Your husband has suffered what appears to be significant spinal trauma. He has no sensation or movement in his lower extremities. This is not fatigue. This is a potential life-altering injury that requires immediate medical intervention." Nicole was already dialing 911. "This is Nicole Rodriguez, off-duty paramedic. I need an ambulance at 1247 Cedar Drive. Adult male, approximately 34 years old. Possible spinal cord injury following blunt force trauma to the lumbar region. Patient is conscious and alert but reports complete loss of sensation and motor function in both lower extremities." Her calm, precise language was both reassuring and terrifying. "No, do not attempt to move the patient. Mechanism of injury was a backward fall onto concrete steps following forceful spinning motion." "Yes, I'll stay on the line." Jennifer was pacing now, heels clicking on wet concrete. "This is ridiculous. He's going to be fine. He's always fine. This is just Marcus being Marcus." But even as she said it, doubt crept into her voice. Ashley stood off to the side, arms crossed. "I can't believe this is happening at my party. This was supposed to be perfect, right? Because my potential paralysis was just an inconvenience to her birthday." The sirens got louder until they were right there, then cut out. Car door slammed. First through the gate was Officer Brooks, a big guy in his 40s with a calm demeanor. His badge was polished and he had that cop look that misses nothing. "What do we have?" he asked. "Nicole. At Mail, spinal trauma from a fall. Witnessed event. No sensation or movement below the waist." Brooks pulled out a notebook. "And you are?" "Nicole Rodriguez, paramedic with Metro West. Off duty, but I was here when it happened." The ambulance crew came next. 2 women in Navy uniforms moving with practiced efficiency. The older one with silver-streaked hair knelt beside me. "Hi, I'm Linda. I'm going to take care of you. What's your name?" "Marcus." "Can you tell me what happened?" This was it. The moment of truth. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what story I'd tell. probably hoping I'd downplay it like always. But lying there, unable to feel half my body, something shifted in me. Kyle picked me up and threw me, I said clearly. I told him no. I told him I didn't want to. He grabbed me anyway, spun me around, and threw me backward into these steps. I can't move my legs. The silence was deafening. I could feel Jennifer's jaw drop. Kyle's panic radiating like heat. This wasn't the story they wanted. Linda nodded calmly and looked at Officer Brooks. You getting this? Every word, he said, scribbling. Then he looked at the crowd. I need to speak with everyone who witnessed this. Nobody leaves until I've gotten statements. Jennifer clicked over in those ridiculous heels, still holding that cocktail. Officer, I think there's been a misunderstanding. My husband's been working double shifts. He's exhausted. Sometimes when he's tired, he gets confused. Confused? She was telling a cop I was confused about what happened to my own body. Linda didn't look at Jennifer. She was checking my pupils with a flashlight. Can you wiggle your toes? I tried so hard, staring down, willing them to move. Nothing. No, I can't feel them at all. Linda exchanged a look with her partner. Then she looked at Brooks. We need to treat this as potential attack with serious bodily injury. This isn't accidental trauma. Based on the patient's account and mechanism of injury, this appears to be intentional attack. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Suddenly, this wasn't just a family incident. This was a crime scene. Kyle started backing away. Wait a minute. It was just fooling around. Guys being guys, he's being dramatic like always. Sir, stay where you are, Brooke said calmly, but with steel underneath. And stop talking until I'm ready for your statement. Linda was attaching monitoring equipment while her partner prepared a long yellow board. Marcus, we're going to immobilize you and transport you to the hospital. This is serious, but you're in good hands. She radioed dispatch. Unit 47 requesting police backup. Suspected attack with bodily injury. Patient is 34-year-old male with apparent spinal cord trauma following alleged physical attack. Everything stopped. The party guests, Jennifer's complaining, Ashley's birthday drama. It all froze because those words made it official. This wasn't an accident. This was attack. Officer Brooks surveyed the crowd. Like I said, nobody leaves. This is now an active investigation. The ambulance ride was sirens, radio chatter, and Linda's steady voice. They had me strapped to that yellow backboard, tighter than anything, my head immobilized between foam blocks. Every pothole sent a jolt through my upper back, but nowhere else. A constant reminder that something was fundamentally wrong. East Haven General looked like every hospital in movies. Glass, concrete, that antiseptic smell hitting you when the doors open. But this wasn't a movie. This was my life. Being wheeled through automatic doors on a gurney, staring up at fluorescent lights. The ER was surprisingly quiet for Saturday evening. Nurses and colorful scrubs moved efficiently. I was just cargo being transferred from one set of professionals to another. They wheeled me into a room that smelled like disinfectant and fear. Beige walls, a loud clock, a window looking onto the parking lot where normal people lived normal lives. Dr. Chen introduced himself while nurses hooked me to beeping machines. He was younger than expected, maybe 45, with graying hair and calm bedside manner. Marcus, I'm Dr. Chen. I understand you've had quite an ordeal. The paramedics briefed me, but I'd like to hear from you. Can you tell me about the fall? So, I told him everything. Kyle grabbing me, spinning me, throwing me backward onto concrete steps, the crack when I hit, my legs stopping. Dr. Chen listened without interrupting, taking notes. We need imaging, starting with an MRI of your spine. I know that sounds scary, but we need to see exactly what we're dealing with before making treatment decisions. Scary didn't cover it. I'd never had an MRI, but I'd heard about them. Loud noises, confined spaces, seeing inside your body, and learning things you didn't want to know. But what choice did I have? Sure have. The MRI machine looked like science fiction. A huge white tunnel humming with energy. They slid me in and for 45 minutes I listened to sounds belonging on a construction site. Banging, worrying, clicking. I tried not to imagine worst-case scenarios. Wheelchair paralysis, never walking, never working, and being nothing but a burden. When they pulled me out, Dr. Chen was waiting with another doctor, an older woman with silver hair and a serious expression. "Marcus, this is Dr. Mitchell. She's our spine specialist and has been reviewing your images." Dr. Mitchell pulled up a chair and opened a tablet showing cross-sections of my back. Black and white images that meant nothing to me, but told her everything. "Marcus, you have a fresh fracture in your lumbar spine, specifically at the L2 vertebra that's causing your current symptoms." A fracture. I'd broken my back. The words hit like another fall. However, that's not all we found. She swiped to different images, point hunting to damaged areas. We discovered 3 older fractures, L4, T9, and T11. These are old injuries, Marcus. Some appear months old, possibly years. The room started spinning. Old injuries. My entire past being rewritten in medical images. Yes. Dr. Chen leaned forward. All these fractures show signs of repeated blunt force trauma at different stages of healing, suggesting they occurred at different times over an extended period. Repeated blunt force trauma. Clinical language made it sterile, but I knew what it meant. All those times Kyle had played with me. All those falls Jennifer said were me being clumsy. All those times I hit walls or furniture during his games and was told I was dramatic when I complained. My spine had been keeping score. Every shove, every throw, every accident that wasn't really an accident. It was documented in bone, like a medical record. "The trampoline," I said suddenly, memory hitting hard. "Last summer, Kyle said we should wrestle. I fell off, hit the frame. Jennifer said I was fine. The stairs," I continued. 3 months ago, I fell downstairs at their house. Kyle said I tripped, but he was right behind me. I couldn't sit up straight for a week." Dr. Mitchell and Dr. Chen exchanged that look. That meant they'd seen this before. "Marcus," Dr. Mitchell said quietly, "your spine is telling us a story, and it's not about accidents." The knock came around 8 that evening as nurses were switching shifts and the hallway got that quiet hospital feeling. I was still processing everything when a woman's voice came through my door. "Marcus, I'm Detective Rivera with Metro Police. Mind if I come in?" Detective Rivera wasn't what I'd expected. Maybe 40 with short natural hair and intelligent brown eyes that took in everything at once. Black blazer, quiet confidence. Officer Brooks asked me to follow up. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck," I said, except the truck's name was Kyle, and apparently it's been hitting me for years. She smiled, not happy, but understanding. "I've been doing this 15 years. I've seen a lot. What I'm seeing tonight is a pattern, and patterns tell stories." She pulled out a tablet. "Before we get into details, I want to show you something. One of the guests recorded what happened. Are you up for watching?" I nodded even though part of me didn't want to see it, but another part needed the proof. The video was shaky but captured everything. There I was by the pool in work clothes clearly trying to stay out of the way. You could see me backing up when Kyle approached. Hear me saying no. See when he grabbed my arm. "Let's show these people some fun." Kyle's voice was crystal clear, loud and boisterous. Then the spin. Watching from outside was worse than living it. I looked completely helpless. At Kyle's mercy, the way he threw me wasn't playful. It was violent, deliberate. The crack when I hit concrete was audible, sharp, and final. Then came the worst part, the laughter. So much laughter while I lay motionless. "Stop being such a baby." Jennifer's voice dripped with contempt. You could see her rolling her eyes, more concerned about guests than her husband. Detective Rivera paused the video. "What do you see?" "I see attack," I said steadily. "I see my brother-in-law attacking me while my wife let it happen." "That's exactly what I see, too." She made notes. "Officer Brooks mentioned this wasn't the first time the doctor showed me your MRI. 3 old fractures, all consistent with the trauma we just watched." So, I told her everything. The trampoline incident where Kyle wrestled me off the edge and I hit the metal frame hard enough to crack a rib. Though we didn't know because Jennifer convinced me I was being dramatic. The stairs at Thanksgiving where Kyle bumped me from behind and I tumbled down concrete steps. The pool party 2 summers ago where he held me underwater as a joke until I nearly passed out. Every time there was an excuse, every time it was just Kyle being Kyle, just family fun gone too far. Every time I was too sensitive, too dramatic, unable to take a joke. "What about your wife?" Detective Rivera asked. "What was her reaction?" That was hardest to talk about because while Kyle physically hurt me, Jennifer made sure I never fought back, never complained, never stood up for myself. She convinced me this was normal, just how her family showed affection. She always took his side. I said always. If I complained about getting hurt, I was embarrassing her. If I tried to avoid his games, I was antisocial. She made me feel like I was the problem for not wanting to be thrown around. Detective Rivera nodded like she'd heard this before. That's called enabling, Marcus. In some jurisdictions, it's considered misuse itself. Your wife had a duty to protect you. Instead, she participated in a pattern of damage that went on for years. A pattern of damage. That's exactly what it was. Not accidents or pranks gone wrong, but a deliberate sustained campaign of violence that had been normalized until I didn't recognize it as misuse. The good news is we have everything we need. The video evidence is clear. The medical evidence shows a documented pattern. We have witness statements, including the paramedic who treated you. She paused. Based on evidence, we're filing charges against Kyle for attack with bodily damage. Given severity in the pattern, we're also looking at aggravated attack and potentially domestic violence by proxy. What about Jennifer? I asked. More complicated. But we're building a case for spousal neglect and obstruction of justice. She actively prevented you from seeking help for previous injuries and created an environment where misuse could continue unchecked. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Validation. Someone with authority was finally saying what happened was wrong. That I wasn't dramatic or oversensitive. That I deserve better than being entertainment for my wife's family. What happens now? Now we make sure this never happens again. And we make sure Kyle faces consequences for what he's done. Not just today, but for years. She handed me her card. If you remember anything else, call me. Your spine has been keeping records. Now it's time for the legal system to do the same. The news they had arrested Kyle hit the family like a bomb. I found out around midnight when Jennifer came storming into my hospital room, face red with fury, voice shaking with rage. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she hissed, keeping her voice low enough nurses wouldn't hear, but loud enough I got full force. "They arrested my brother, put him in handcuffs in front of the neighbors." Mrs. Peterson was outside and saw everything. Mrs. Peterson. That's what she worried about. What neighbors would think, how this looked to her social circle, not that her husband was lying in a hospital bed with a broken spine. "Jennifer," I started, but she cut me off. "Don't. Just don't. This is exactly the dramatic bull crap I should have expected from you. You couldn't just let it go, could you? Couldn't accept it was an accident and move on like a normal person would. An accident." Even now, with me paralyzed from the waist down, she still called it an accident. Like the MRI images were my imagination. "The doctors found 3 other fractures," I said, trying to stay calm. "Old ones, Jennifer, from all those other times your brother played with me. This isn't about one incident. This is about years of misuse you helped cover up." Her laugh was sharp and bitter. "Misuse? That's rich. You're calling normal family roughhousing misuse now. No wonder you can't handle a real job or make real friends. You're too busy playing victim to actually live your life." There it was. The same pattern that kept me trapped for years. Turning my pain into my failure, making my injuries into character flaws, making me the problem instead of the person hurting me. But something was different now. Maybe the painkillers. Maybe finally having medical professionals and law enforcement take me seriously. Maybe I just hit rock bottom with nowhere left to fall. Whatever it was, I found myself speaking up in a way I never had. He threw me into concrete steps, Jennifer, on purpose, and you watched it happen. You told me to walk it off when I couldn't feel my legs. What kind of wife does that? The kind married to a man who makes everything about himself, she shot back. Do you know what this will do to my family, to my career? I work in public relations. How will it look when people find out my husband pressed charges against my brother for playing around at a family party? Her career, her family, her reputation. Not once had she asked how I felt, whether I was in pain, what doctors said about my prognosis. It was all about her and how my injury inconvenienced her life. That's when Officer Brooks appeared in the doorway, expression grim. Mrs. Caldwell, I need to speak with you. Jennifer turned with that fake smile she used on authority figures. Officer, I think there's been confusion about what happened today. My husband tends to exaggerate. Ma'am, you're under investigation for spousal neglect and obstruction of justice, Brooks said, cutting through her charm. Detective Rivera has been reviewing the case. Your behavior today and over the past several years suggests a pattern of enabling misuse and preventing your husband from seeking appropriate medical care. Color drained from Jennifer's face so fast, I thought she'd faint. That's ridiculous. I would never. You told a man with a spinal injury to walk it off, Brooks continued. You dismissed his pain as attention-seeking. You actively discouraged him from reporting previous injuries. That's not spousal support, ma'am. That's criminal negligence. Jennifer looked at me like this was my fault. Marcus, tell him. Tell him I'm not. Tell him this is all a misunderstanding. But I couldn't because it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was exactly what it looked like. A woman who'd spent years enabling her brother's violence because it was easier than confronting the truth. The explosion came around 2 o'clock in the morning. My phone started buzzing with texts from Jennifer's extended family. Ashley was furious her birthday was ruined by my drama. Their parents threatened to sue me for defamation. Cousins and aunts and uncles I barely knew weighed in about what a troublemaker I was. How I'd always been jealous of Kyle. How I was tearing the family apart with my lies. The messages kept coming, each more vicious than the last. They painted me as manipulative, attention-seeking, fabricating years of misuse to destroy an innocent man. They said I was weak, pathetic, undeserving of the Caldwell name. They said Jennifer deserved better than a husband who'd betray her family like this. I was drowning in their anger, suffocating under their collective denial when I heard a soft knock. Marcus, it's Claire, my sister. I hadn't seen Claire in almost 2 years. Not since Jennifer convinced me she was jealous of our marriage and trying to cause problems. Looking back, I realized Jennifer had systematically isolated me from anyone who might question what was happening. Claire stepped in cautiously, like she wasn't sure she'd be welcome. She looked older than I remembered, brown hair stray with gray worry lines around her eyes. But when she saw me in that hospital bed, her face crumpled with almost physical pain. Oh, Marcus, she whispered suddenly beside my bed, taking my hand. I heard what happened. I came as soon as I could. Claire, I said, my voice cracked. I'm so sorry for everything, for staying away, for not calling. Stop, she said firmly. You don't apologize to me. I should have tried harder to stay in touch. I should have seen what was happening. I always knew something was off about Jennifer, about that whole family, but I didn't know how bad it was. She pulled her chair closer into eyes and tense. I want you to know something. I never stopped loving you. I never stopped worrying. And I never believed for 1 second that you deserved the way they treated you. For the first time in years, maybe since I'd married Jennifer, someone from my family was telling me I mattered, that I was worth protecting, that I deserved better. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I cried. The surgery came 3 days later. Dr. Mitchell explained it like fixing a car. Engineering terms about rods and screws and fusion procedures that would stabilize my spine and hopefully give me the best shot at walking again. Best shot being operative because nobody could promise anything except pain and a long recovery. I woke from anesthesia feeling like I'd been hit by that truck all over again. The incision in my back felt like someone took a blowtorch to my spine and the drugs made everything fuzzy and distant. But the worst part wasn't physical pain. It was the fear. Every day I'd stare down at my legs under hospital blankets and will them to move to give me some sign the surgery worked. Some days I swore I felt something, a tingling or twinge. But doctors warned that phantom sensations were common and didn't necessarily mean anything. That's when Dr. Santos entered my life like a drill sergeant in scrubs. Maybe 5 feet tall, but carried herself like she could bench press a truck with graying hair and a no-nonsense ponytail and a direct stare that made you sit straighter even lying flat. "Marcus," she said on our first day, "I'm your physical therapist and I'm going to tell you something that might piss you off. This will be the hardest thing you've ever done. There will be days you want to quit and want to give up and accept this is as good as it gets, but I'm not going to let you." She was right about it being hard. Jesus, was she right? The first week, all we did was try getting me to sit up without passing out. My balance was shot, my core strength non-existent, and every movement felt like my spine was being twisted with a wrench. I threw up twice the first day just from staying upright. "Your body remembers pain," Dr. Santos would say during sessions that left me sweating and shaking. Now we need to teach it to remember strength. Meanwhile, Dr. Parker worked on my head while Dr. Santos worked on my body. She was younger than expected for a trauma counselor, maybe 35, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a voice that made you feel like you could tell her anything. "You weren't weak," she told me during one session. "You were systematically manipulated to believe you deserved the treatment you received. That's not weakness. That's psychological misuse, and it's just as real as physical injuries." She helped me put words to things I'd never articulated. The way Jennifer would gaslight me into thinking my pain wasn't real. The way Kyle's games escalated when I tried to set boundaries. The way the whole family closed ranks and made me feel crazy for objecting to behavior any normal person would recognize as abusive. The breakthrough came 6 weeks after surgery. I was in the physical therapy room strapped into this contraption supposed to help me balance when Dr. Santos told me to try standing. I'd been trying for weeks with no success. My legs hanging like dead weight. But something was different that day. When I focused all my energy on pushing down through my feet, I felt something. A normal sensation, not anything close, but something. A connection between my brain and legs that hadn't been there. "Holy crap," I whispered as I managed to support some of my own weight for about 3 seconds before collapsing back into the safety harness. Dr. Santos was grinning like she'd won the lottery. "Did you feel that?" "I felt something," I said. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something else, too. Hope. The courthouse was nothing like I'd expected. Maybe I'd watched too many legal dramas, but I'd pictured something grand. Instead, it was just a regular building with fluorescent lights and worn carpet that smelled like old coffee and anxiety. But walking into that courtroom with my cane and unsteady gait felt like walking into the most important moment of my life. Kyle's lawyer was exactly what you'd expect defending a rich kid's attack case. Expensive suit, slicked back hair, condescending smile. During opening statements, he painted Kyle as a fun-loving family man whose harmless prank was blown out of proportion by an oversensitive brother-in-law. "A history of dramatic behavior, ladies and gentlemen," he said, gesturing toward Kyle. This was nothing more than typical family horseplay that unfortunately resulted in an accident. My client never intended damage, and the prosecution's attempt to criminalize normal sibling behavior is frankly ridiculous. Normal sibling behavior. Even in a courtroom, they were still trying to make this my fault for not taking a joke. But then the evidence started rolling in and their story fell apart like a house of cards. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Sandra Martinez, methodically laid out the case piece by piece. First came the video footage from the party played on a big screen. The courtroom was dead silent as they watched me being spun and thrown like a rag doll. You could hear Kyle's laughter on the recording. See the deliberate force he used. Watch the exact moment my body slammed into concrete. There was nothing playful about it. Then came Dr. Mitchell with the MRI images. She put those black and white pictures on a screen and walked the jury through each fracture like reading a medical textbook. 3 previous fractures, all consistent with blunt force trauma, L4, T9, T11. These injuries occurred over several years and show a clear pattern of repeated misuse. When it was my turn to testify, I was terrified my voice would shake. But as I sat in that witness chair looking at the jury, something clicked. These people deserve the truth. Not the sanitized family version, not the victim blaming I'd been fed for years, but the actual truth. I told them about the trampoline incident, the stairs, the pool games that weren't games. I explained how every injury was dismissed. Every complaint turned back on me as evidence of my weakness. Kyle didn't just hurt me that day at the pool, I said, my voice steady and clear. He'd been hurting me for years, and my wife's family taught me it was my fault for not being tough enough to take it. Dr. Parker's testimony was devastating. She explained trauma bonding, gaslighting, and psychological manipulation that keeps misused victims trapped in cycles of violence. She made clear that my reluctance to fight back or report incidents wasn't weakness. It was a predictable response to sustained psychological misuse. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. When they read the verdict, guilty on all counts, Kyle's face went white. His lawyer immediately started talking appeals, but the judge wasn't having it. "Mr. Caldwell," Judge Monroe said, looking directly at Kyle, "you have shown a pattern of violence toward your brother-in-law spanning several years. Your actions were deliberate, calculated, and resulted in serious bodily damage. This court sentences you to 5 years in state prison." Jennifer got 18 months probation and court-ordered counseling for enabling misuse. As they led Kyle away in handcuffs, Judge Monroe's closing words echoed through the courtroom. "You mocked his pain, dismissed his suffering, and treated him as less than human. But he survived your cruelty, and now justice has been served." 18 months later, I'm standing in my own kitchen making coffee in my own apartment. And I still can't believe this is my life now. The place isn't much. A 1-bedroom in a decent neighborhood with hardwood floors that crack when I walk and windows that let in sunlight, but it's mine. Nobody here tells me I'm dramatic when I need to rest my back. Nobody dismisses my pain or makes jokes about my limp. The limp is permanent, according to Dr. Mitchell. Some days it's barely noticeable. Other days I need the cane to get around, but I'm walking. Against all odds, against the initial prognosis that had me preparing for life in a wheelchair. I'm walking on my own 2 feet. The job at the Metro Men's Outreach Center started as volunteer work. Something Dr. Parker suggested to help me process my trauma by helping others work through theirs. Turns out there are a lot of guys out there who've been told their pain doesn't matter, who've been convinced that speaking up about misuse makes them weak or dramatic. "You taught me to trust the quiet ones," Nicole told me last week when she stopped by the center. She's working as a trauma nurse now at East Haven General, and she makes a point of really listening to patients who aren't making noise about their pain. The ones who say they're fine when they're not. "You taught me that quiet doesn't mean okay." I still get emails from Jennifer. She's in therapy now. Court-ordered at first, but she says she's continuing voluntarily. Her messages have evolved from angry blame to something that might eventually resemble an apology, though we're not there yet. Her latest email accused me of wrecking everything by pressing charges, but there was less venom than before. Maybe that's progress. I don't respond anymore. Dr. Parker calls it protective boundaries, and I call it sanity. I didn't wreck anything. I just finally told the truth about what was already broken. The MRI scans are framed on my wall. Now, I know that sounds weird, but hear me out. Those black and white images of my fractured spine aren't just medical records. They're proof. Proof that I wasn't making it up, wasn't being dramatic, wasn't weak for not fighting back. Every crack in those vertebrae is documentation of survival. Sometimes people ask if I'm angry about the years I lost, the pain I endured, the family that threw me away rather than acknowledge what they'd done to me. The honest answer is that some days I am angry, but mostly I'm just grateful. Grateful that Nicole knew what she was looking at when I couldn't move my legs. Grateful that Dr. Mitchell could read the story my spine was telling. Grateful that Detective Rivera believed me when I finally found courage to speak up. I was told to walk it off, to stop being a baby, to quit making everything about me. Now I walk on my own terms, at my own pace, toward a future I'm building for myself. Every step I take is proof they were wrong about me. This is where the story ends. How was today's story? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and where you're watching from. Like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories.